Good morning and welcome. Please join me in our responsive reading this morning. Give us the spirit of a child. Give us the ears of a child.
That we may hear more innocent music of our days.
Give us the heart of a child.
That we may see with wonder and delight.
Give us the faith of a child.
So that we may not be afraid to need and to love.
Thank you. Welcome. This is a very exciting day in church today with our child dedication happening. I am Angie Walters, and I have been a member here for about 15 years. Supporting parents is a mission in my life. I am currently a co-leader in Parent Circle at Fountain Street, and I am also a co-founder of Moms Bloom, which is a locally grown grassroots nonprofit here in West Michigan. We are called Moms Bloom because we believe that when moms are nurtured, they bloom, and they are better able to nurture their whole family. And this has a ripple effect out into our whole community. Moms Bloom sends in trained volunteers to help parents during that crazy, stressful transition time after a baby is born. It's a time when parents feel so isolated and overwhelmed, and we are there for them. We are recreating the village it takes to raise a child. We want to thank Fountain Street Church and the Social Action Committee for your support of Moms Bloom. We have gratefully received your support, and you are supporting our work in the Grand Rapids community. I definitely see a parallel between what is happening today in church with our child dedication and what we do at Moms Bloom. Today, the Fountain Street Church community promises to stand up and support parents as they raise up their children on their spiritual journey. And Moms Bloom does something similar in our greater community by standing by parents and offering physical and emotional support. Now I'm going to introduce our very own Amber Fox, who's also having her child dedicated today, and she's going to talk a little bit about her personal connection with Moms Bloom as well. Welcome today, and thank you for being here.
Good morning. My journey with Moms Bloom started back in about 2008 when I was a board member with Moms Bloom, writing grant proposals to get funding for the program. Little did I know that, that was 2008, 2014, 6 years later, that I would find myself in need of the services of Moms Bloom when we had our son, Zephin. This cold February that we had last year, I was at home after my mom had left to go back to Indianapolis, and my husband and our two other children and I found ourselves in need of support. We contacted Moms Bloom, and we had a wonderful Moms Bloom volunteer, Valerie Williams, came to our house. She was only supposed to come once a week, but she actually came much more often than that. And she would sit with me, she would fold laundry so that I could take a shower and get the clothes put away so our house didn't feel quite as stressful. She would coach me on having guests and remind me that this time was so precious for bonding with our new son, and would help just ease that pressure that we often feel about needing to be perfect or have everything in place. And just that gentle guidance and support made that transition so much easier for me and our whole family. And just that idea of creating a village, that's really what Moms Bloom is all about, and I'm so grateful for the experience that we had through Moms Bloom services. Thank you. You are too, right?
Yeah. Good morning. It is tradition here at Fountain Street Church that on 2 occasions we dedicate children and families. Today is one of those days. And so we begin. Hear these words from Khalil Gibran. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and the daughters of life's longing for itself. Of life's longing for itself. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they may have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, a place we cannot visit, not even in our dreams. Words from one person, Khalil Gibran, from one time and from one place, but perhaps 2 for this time and this place. So at this time, we call forward the Freeland family You may please journey up the steps, the Selby Toit family and the Fox Wallstrom family. Please join us. And I see that some of you have the best seats in the house for this dedication. Wonderful.
Let us rejoice in children, in the new life they bring into this old world, with their eager minds and hearts. Dedication is an act of thanksgiving in community, an act of welcome and promise, not only for the one being named and blessed, but for the parents, family, and community who make this life and these promises together. Let faith, hope, and love guide our hearts and hands as we dedicate these children into the life and the work of Fountain Street Church.
And another reading. Show me, I pray, those things that make for true happiness. Help me learn, help us learn, that we may be blessings to the world. We want to feel your trust, that we might dare to be trustworthy. Your love, that we might risk loving. Your acceptance, that we might affirm others and ourselves. Your forgiveness, that we might too learn how to forgive. May we be caressed without being smothered. May we experience a sense of discipline, of practice that isn't one that casts us down. Celebrate who we are. We are your children.
Welcome to you all, families and children. A child is a most precious gift. Through your children, you will indeed be invited to a hero's journey. Your children will be for you a mirror in which is revealed both the depth of your darkness and the brightness of your light. With them, you will be called to experience both joy and sorrow, the challenge of giving and receiving, and the power of hope and despair. In other words, all of life. Do you, the families of these children to be dedicated, welcome them just as they are? Do you promise to love, honor, teach, and care for them, each as best as you are able, encouraging them with the help of our church community to discover their unique way in faith? And do you promise to walk with them as they explore the questions that make for a meaningful life? Who am I? Why am I here? And how might I be truly helpful? If this is your pledge this day, please say together, I do. I do.
By what name will this child be called? Miles Kenneth. We bless you with water. Water is a reminder of the source from which all life comes. It's also a symbol of the spirit that flows within, between, and beyond us all. We bless you in faith and hope and love, that your ears may hear clearly, that your eyes may see brightly, that your mouth may speak kindly, and that your spirit may shine forth like a light unto a world with great need. Amen.
By what name shall this child be known?
Jax Anthony.
Jax Anthony. We bless you with water, a symbol of that all of life rises up from the waters, and a sign of all that is good among us, giving life. We dedicate you to this community today in faith and hope and love, that your eyes might see brightly, your ears might hear clearly, your mouth might speak kindly, and your spirit be a light unto the world in great need. Amen.
Okay, I'm going to have you all come forward. Do you want to hold it, Stephen? Okay, ready? Do you want me to hold it? Okay. By what name will this child be called?
Zephan Benet Fox Western.
Okay. Hi. Zephan Benet, we dedicate you and bless you with water this day, a symbol of the spirit that flows within, between, and among us, a reminder of the source from which all the waters rise up, our origins. Do you want to help me with this part? Okay. Here, you can press it. We bless you that your ears might hear clearly. Okay. You can put your hands on it. That your eyes might see brightly. That your mouth might speak kindly. And that your spirit might shine forth unto a world in great need. Amen. I have a promise or a question for the two of you before Jason dedicates you as well. Do you promise to be the best big sisters that you can be to your brother? Yes, amen. Okay.
If I can invite you all to gather over this way. Come on in here close. By what name shall this young lady be known?
Mirabella Jane.
Mirabella Jane, from the waters which symbolize life and the spirit that flows in between, through, and beyond us all, this community dedicates you into our life and work, that your eyes might see brightly, that your ears might hear clearly, that your mouth might speak kindly, and your spirit be a light unto the world in great need. Amen. And by what name shall this young lady be known?
Alita Rain.
Alita Rain. We bless you out of the waters, symbolizing that from which all life rises. And in faith and hope and love this day, we dedicate you into our community, blessing you that your eyes might see brightly, that your ears might hear clearly, that your mouth might speak kindly, and that your spirit be a light unto the world in great need. Amen. Families here gathered, we offer you roses today. We have removed the thorns from the stems. We cannot, however, remove the thorns from life. Our prayer today is that through life, though it may have thorns, this community offers you its presence and comfort, desiring never to add to, but always to help to overcome whatever struggle and pain may come your way as you journey with your children. Will the congregation please rise as we offer a promise to these children and their families?
Do you welcome these children into the life and work of Fountain Street Church? Do you promise to love, to honor, to teach, and to care for them as best as you are able, supporting and encouraging them this day and all the days of your life? If so, please say, we do.
We do. Friends, hear this blessing. May the blessing of the Spirit hold you and keep you. May the divine that is your understanding be present with you always. And may the love that grows in the heart of this congregation for you every day invite you to abundant life and the great work of shalom for all people. Amen.
perfect. Perfect not in the sense of flawless, but in the sense of complete. And that includes you. For such a piece of music can only evoke silence as its best appreciation. Brahms wrote that in part because of two deaths that occurred earlier in his life. One was his mother in 1865, and then his great friend and fellow composer Robert Schumann in 1866. Brahms was not a man of deep faith. In fact, he was much of a skeptic. And so the standard requiem texts felt hollow and inappropriate, although the biblical text may seem hardly different, but for him it was a way of capturing the sadness and the hope that we all encounter in grief. And that one particular piece is perhaps the best expression of hope with tenderness at the same time. Thank you. Thank you. You can sing that every week as far as I'm concerned. It is lovely. In the Christian lectionary this morning, there's a parable, and I'm going to read most of it. It's a long one, so I'll lead some of the repetitions so you can have the gist of it. In Matthew, it reads, It is as if a man going on a journey summoned his servants and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, meaning a bundle of money. To another 2 talents, and to another 1, each according to his ability. And then he went away. And after a long time, the master came and settled accounts with them. The one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more, saying, Master, you handed over to me 5 talents. See, I've made 5 more. The master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy servant. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And the one with the 2 talents also came forward, saying, Master, you handed me 2 talents. See, I've made 2 more. His master said to him, Well done, my good and trustworthy servant. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Then the one who had received 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I knew that you were a harsh man, reaping what you did not sow and gathering where you did not scatter. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here is what is yours. And the master replied, You wicked and lazy servant, you ought to have invested my money, and on my return I would have received what was my own with interest. Interesting counsel on the part of Jesus of Nazareth, I should think. I'll come back to that in a minute. So I'm going to resume a story that I began back in September. And I'm going to start with, well, it wasn't a little red Corvette, but it was red and it was a convertible. And driving it was a 32-year-old man, and the new minister of Fountain Street Baptist Church, hired sight unseen by everyone but the pulpit committee. It would be hard to be more different than Milton McGarl, who had left a year earlier after a discouraging tenure. But it would not be fair to say that his successor arrived bubbling with hope. That would also be a lie. It took weeks to persuade him to give up his comfortable and prosperous parish in the Chicago area. He came here looking around and privately doubted that he could last more than 3 or 4 years before he gave up on them. To his dying day, he described his first day as minister of Fountain Street Baptist Church as the worst day of his life. He was Duncan Littlefair. Our church history was written in 2 volumes, the first by Duncan's friend and Jerry Ford's law partner, Philip Buchan, and it ends midway through Duncan's 36-year tenure here, the longest this church has ever enjoyed. The rest of the story was written by a child who grew up here, Roger Birchhausen, who is now a minister himself, a very fine colleague. I commend both volumes to you, as this long fall sequence about our church and our faith can only touch on the story they tell at length. In speaking to our history, I'm also following another predecessor's path, David Rankin, who composed a series of sermons on each of the senior ministers of this church, and he characterized each with the word, the spark, the prophet, the priest, the martyr, and Duncan, the visionary. My hope, a much more modest one, I think, has been to find in our nearly 150 years of existence a thread that connects them all. To my surprise, I found three. A liberality of heart found in our earliest years when we refused to banish our own because they were not pure enough. A concern for the liberation of the oppressed and the poor who were suffering during the Industrial Revolution and went unnoticed. And finally, liberty of thought, the freedom to think what you will without fear of condemnation or ostracism. All three of them had made themselves present here before Duncan arrived, but what makes his ministry distinct and powerful is that he braided them together into a single rope, such that they were no longer three, but one. Across the street here, if you wish to go over today or some other day, in the plaza of the community college, there is a plaque to one side. It's not about Duncan, but it could be, because on it are these words by Emerson: "Every institution is the lengthened shadow of one man." Though he retired 30 years ago in 1982 almost, and 1980, and has been dead for 10 years, this church remains his lengthened shadow. While many here remember well Duncan in his prime and latter years, there are very few, though, that remain from those earliest years, which are my interest today, because who he became and what we became as a church took shape in those first years. So yes, he did drive a red convertible, he smoked cigarettes, and he wore a red beret in 1944 Grand Rapids, which made him not just unusual, but highly suspect to boot. This is a town, or was a town, that was famous for its conservatism at every level, for a culture of piety and propriety. Now, most people prized those values and thought Grand Rapids to be a model community because of them, but you know, there's no such thing as unity even in a place like Grand Rapids, so others found it confining, even coercive. Those people, many of them younger, many of them returning from the war, having been broadened by the experience of war and the world, found in Duncan's presence and voice someone who was willing to say that the emperor had no clothes. He was frank, almost to the point of recklessness. He told himself, as it was written later, that he was going to swing for the fences when he was here, not pull any punches despite the risk, and if it meant losing his job, so be it. It did not hurt that he was young and blond and handsome and brimming with self-confidence. By every account I've heard, Duncan was magnetic. Within a year of his arrival, Sunday mornings had swelled from 150 to 1,000. Famously, in the spring of 1945, he preached a 10-sermon series on the nature of God. 10 sermons! People don't listen for 10 minutes anymore. With breathless speed, for institutions at least, he disposed of baptism and communion and the Lord's Prayer. They vanished like the wind. Some people complained, of course, but he was never going to be the politician or the diplomat. And with so many people coming, who could argue with success? Swift changes, though, even exciting ones, are still challenging in their own ways. Duncan had little interest in church management, and one consequence was that even though attendance grew, finances did not. One year in his early tenure, they had to cut $14,000 from an $83,000 budget. That's almost 20%. In those first 15 years, staff came and went almost every year. Think of it as like being an adolescent boy. The church was changing so fast it no longer fit into its old clothing, its old budget, its old staff, or its old governance. There was a board of deacons. Out they went. There was a bust of Alfred Wesley Wishart out there. out it went. All underwent major changes, and with those changes, an inevitable turbulence that after so many years of stasis was exhilarating but dizzying nonetheless. By 1960, though, Duncan was in his 40s, the meat of a preacher's life. The staff had settled down to a team that would prevail for the next generation, and a pattern had set in. I mention all this because we have a sense of things always being the way they were when Duncan was, but the moment Duncan arrived, nothing was the way it used to be, and it took a long time to become the way Duncan did it. Thomas Carlyle, a Scottish philosopher of the 1840s, and by the way, Duncan was very proud of his Scots-Canadian ancestry, is famous in many regards for what is called the great man theory of history, the idea that inspired heroes turn up who shaped the events of the world. Maybe Emerson was catching a whiff of that when he wrote those words. They were contemporaries. In our times, Joseph Campbell focused on the myth of the heroic journey as being the basis of all myths. He and Duncan were well-acquainted friends, and Campbell came here several times over the years. So I think it's likely that the heroic quest was a powerful idea for Duncan. He desired a church that reflected his strong conviction that religious naturalism was an idea whose time had come and had to move from the halls of the academy down into the streets of real life. As it says on a window in our social hall, quoting him, religion is about daily life or it is about nothing at all. That's why I think, and this is my opinion now, Duncan's true legacy is not in this sanctuary or in this pulpit, but in the church house. In the 1950s, the church disposed of the traditional Sunday school pattern of teaching Bible stories and saving souls before they got too old. They went and found a place called Union College that was working on something called the Character Research Project. And they decided to enroll to figure out how best to raise children as moral, ethical, spiritual, and religious beings. And in the meantime, they decided they were not here to teach a Sunday school, but to create a character school. Verdi Reeser, his colleague in pastoral ministry, was the connection. The idea was to equip children with the means to think and thrive, not to convince and convert. Very much consistent with the idea of a natural religion, that we are all born capable of deep and profound spiritual thoughts, and the core of this conviction was that you don't need to save souls, you just need to grow them. In my Unitarian tradition from which I have come, there is an old formula that spoke of the spiritual leadership of Jesus and salvation by character, which sets us apart, and maybe this church as well, from the more orthodox versions of Christianity. Spiritual leadership means that we look to Jesus to show us the way, not to be the way. And salvation by character means that we have a task to do in this life, not just to sign up for the winning team. And I think that describes Duncan with a fair amount of accuracy. He saw in Jesus, about whom he preached another series of sermons a year later, a heroic model of the ethical and spiritual life. I believe that he believed that the task of the church was to grow people in knowledge and courage so they could take on that same task of following in those same footsteps. A church for growing souls, yes, not for saving them. Now let's go back to the parable. In Matthew, Jesus tells of the three servants who were given the talents. The last servant, who understood the risk of failure, hid the money lest it get lost. Because when you invest, anyone who's invested in 2008 would understand this, you can lose as well as gain. And we can well imagine that the third servant knew full well that if he lost the money, he might lose more than that. but he's punished for being prudent. It's a rational fear, after all. He was not unwise to do it. So why was he punished? Well, parables have lots of meanings, of course. That's the beauty of parables. You can go back time and time again and notice a detail, and it can change your whole perspective on the story. But one of those meanings is that those who live in fear will lose exactly what they're trying to protect. Jesus says it elsewhere, he who would save his life will lose it. If we live in fear of dying, either spiritually or physically or socially or by reputation, we will not be able to keep what we are holding on to and lose everything else as well. And churches are here not to provide you with a safe place to protect you from danger, but to equip you with the capacity to face the really legitimate fears of life. Because only when you face them and continue living, only when you realize the risks are real, but that you must continue to take the risks, will you be alive. Only then can we braid together the liberality of heart, the liberation for the oppressed, the liberty of thought, the head, the heart, the hands, the strands that by themselves are not enough to sustain us through this life, and braid a rope to which we can cling, to which we can extend to others, something that will carry us through life. It is an axiom in our trade, we preachers, that all preachers have one sermon and we spend our career trying to preach it. I think what Duncan was trying to say was some version of that. I can't say it as well as he. It is not my task to do that. But he was here to say, what you need to live life is right in front of you. Grab a hold of it. Yes, you're afraid, but fear is no excuse not to live. Do not let fear run your life. Let courage be real. In the Gospel of John, it says, I came that you may have life and to have it abundantly. So saith the Gospel. So said Duncan Littlefair. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight, thou who art my rock and my Redeemer.